everyone, and welcome to the June 15th meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Here.
Saltzman?
Here.
Novick?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Hale?
Here. Before we begin this morning, we just need to take a moment, I think. We had terrible tragedy in our country once again involving gun violence and hatred, and the worst yet of this seemingly endless parade of awful incidents around our country, and this latest one in Orlando. Our flags are at half-mast at the President's request and also at mine for the city flag, and we're flying the pride flag with the city flag at half-mast as well. Let's take a moment of silence for all the victims and families and for the city of Orlando. Thank you very much.
Mayor, in recognition of some of the representatives in Congress have walked out after moments of silence, and I'm wondering if we could have a short discussion about what else we might be able to do.
Exactly right, and I appreciate the fact that they did that. And in fact, this council should be proud of what we've accomplished so far in our advocacy for gun sanity. There's more to do. We're going to be working on our legislative agenda for the next session over the next few months. I certainly hope and expect that we'll have issues on that agenda that deal with gun violence, particularly assault weapons. So that would be one thing I'd put on the table, is that we should not regard the progress we've made at the legislature on guns so far. I appreciate closing the background check loophole. I appreciate closing the domestic violence loophole, but we should not regard that as finishing the job.
Right, and we've had, some additional successes in the hotspot zones and in parental responsibility, locking things up. I would really appreciate the city attorney looking into, are there other things that we can do? Can we tax assault rifles even if we can't ban them?
I like that idea. I think we should revisit.
Is there anything we could do to push the limits and send
Yeah.
something through the courts to see if it even is it legal? Because as we said when we were honoring the victims of gun violence was it just last week when we had the Orange Day, I think it was.
Right.
We need to do more. It's clearly not getting any better. It's getting worse.
No, I like that suggestion. I'll draft and share a memo to the city attorney asking for options on what the city might do and even where the gray areas are, because we are somewhat preempted by state law from taking action on issues related to guns, but I don't think any of us want to concede that we're completely preempted.
Well, let's think of something that they haven't preempted and do that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Good idea. All right, well, let's explore that. In fact, when Martha Pellegrino gets back, we should enlist her in that work as well. Steve, other thoughts?
There's another issue that's come up in the context of the Orlando tragedy, which we've actually spoken out about before, which is the FDA guideline saying that gay men should not donate blood. I think we actually passed a resolution on that topic last year. The FDA has somewhat modified their position, and now it's you can't donate blood if you've been sexually active in the past year. But there's increasing amount of medical evidence that that is not necessary. France doesn't do that. Italy doesn't do that. So I think we could reiterate our call for a change to that. I called the White House, since the FDA is part of the Obama administration, I called the White House comment line this morning at 202-456-1111 to say that the president should talk to the FDA about changing the ban. Because one of the things that happened is that a lot of gay men's initial generous response to Orlando was to try to donate blood, and they learned that their blood was not wanted, and that's really sad.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Other thoughts? Other ingredients that we might put on the table? That's very helpful. Thank you. We'll follow up on both of those in terms of our legislative agenda. And I'll also ask both our crime prevention folks and the police bureau if there's some thoughts that they might want to add to our mix. Because as a city, we should do everything we can as a city. Oh, I'm on, but the button, there we go. I thought I was on. Anyway, we will look for every opening we can run through and try to run through it.
Great,
Thank you. Okay, we have some communications items up front, and then we will get to our regular calendar, including some time certains and the consent calendar. I don't have any requests to pull items from the consent calendar as yet. Is that right? Any? Okay, so let's please take communications.
I'm just saying that's going to be some kind of a record.
No, it never
During the
happens.
election.
Let's take communications item number 661, please.
Request of Michael Withy to address council regarding affordable housing.
Good morning, Michael. Come on up.
So this topic is about the emergency relief efforts that, like Homer Williams has proposed. There's actually that spot, that 50-acre spot on Front Street. There's actually another program that was planned by architects. Sniff Dog Hotel actually hired an architect to design an emergency relief effort. Much like you say, after natural disaster, I personally have set up 4 of them, 3 after Katrina and 1 after Hurricane Ike. So I know that these work. Unfortunately, they are in tents, they're in barrack-type tents, but they're run by professionals, volunteers and professionals, not sort of like what you'd see at Hazelnut Grove, which is somebody with a murder conviction is on the actual permit. So we kind of want to do away with those types of emergency relief efforts. It's nice that they have somewhere to go, but it's certainly not going to help them get to where they need to be. So we suggest that you guys pay close attention to what they are suggesting. And I think I actually brought it up to Josh. Maybe he's talking to Corey about it, not sure. But the $100 million deal with Homer Williams is probably not feasible. So we are for the professionally run homeless camps, but our organization's not really for just letting anybody pitch a tent anywhere they please, because it's not really helping them get off the street. Second thing I'd like to bring up is, now that we have inclusionary zoning, I hope that you guys work together to actually stretch those boundaries as well. And that's about it.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate your advocacy. Thank you. Okay, 662.
Request of Michelle Beauchamp to address council regarding the city enforcing the noise compliance ordinances and rules in Old Town.
Please come on up. Good morning. Hi, good morning. Welcome.
It's just really brief. I just would like to encourage, request.
Get a little closer to the microphone.
I would like to encourage, request, or beg if needed, that the city follow and enforce its own rules and ordinances that have been brought forth regarding noise control in Old Town, Portland. I've resided there since August of 2015, and music is just constantly emanating up to 7 nights a week, at least till 2 a.m. So.
Those from the clubs.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. If you have a minute while you're here in City Hall, would you do me a favor, or do this issue a favor, and stop up at my office and talk to Chad Stover?
Certainly.
Chad has worked on a lot of Old Town issues on my behalf, so that he's somebody who might be helpful. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very
all
much.
for your
Thanks
time.
for coming. You bet. Okay, 663.
Request of Glenda Hughes to address council regarding small business and contracting with the city. She has had to reschedule.
Okay. And 664.
Request of Charles Johnson to address council regarding ransom and extortion near vacant lot.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Charles Johnson, and obviously in light of the tragedy in Orlando, I want to thank you for your moment of silence. And I particularly want to thank Commissioner Novick for raising the FDA's excessively harsh and non-productive blood exclusion in the context of the fact that what happened is 49 queer people were slaughtered by a person who should never have had access to a gun. So we have 2 extremely important issues. Well, actually, even more than that. We have homophobia and violence there was an incident of one person that came up on Facebook that was recently attacked here in Portland, but I feel very safe. Thank you, Mayor, for coming to the vigil on the night after the event in front of Embers and working with the police department to close down Broadway so that thousands of people could gather in community and say that we're going to do everything possible to make sure every gay, lesbian, trans, queer person in Oregon feels safe when they're in the city of Portland and wherever else we can have effect. The gun safety issue, I know, has been a long struggle, and different people on different, worry about one issue eclipsing another. We all have to work in the area that's closest to our heart. When I wrote this and I talked about extortion and ransom, that was probably the day that Miss Barbara Kite came and spoke to you about the property at 7707 Southeast Alder, where a beautiful historic tree has been taken down, and 12 condos are going to get sandwiched into a very mixed neighborhood of people of diverse economic background. I can't speak totally to the racial and ethnic diversity in that neighborhood, but there's some risk that with the projects that are coming, that the city will lose diversity. Occasionally there are high-income people of color with tech money that depart from San Francisco and the Silicon Valley, but we want to make sure that as we grow the city, we have thoughtful and aggressive policies to prevent a white flight to Portland. We don't want a white flight. We want a diverse, worldwide community of open-hearted, non-homophobic, non-racist people to come and find ways to fit into mostly our existing neighborhoods. As Mr. Novick always points out, growth is coming, density will have to increase in some places, but not at the expense of complex projects like, as you may be aware, some people are calling it the Death Star, the yard on Burnside just north of the bridge where the window issue is. So many issues facing the city. I thank you for the work that you do to reach out and talk to individuals, regardless of whether they're able to vote or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, we've got a couple minutes before we get to our time certain, so let's go ahead and address the consent agenda. Again, I don't have any requests to withdraw items, so let's take a vote, please, on the consent calendar as printed.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, let's see, let's move to the regular agenda and take up 679.
Assign certain city-owned property at Swan Island Lagoon from Environmental Services to Parks and Recreation.
That's a second reading, a roll call vote, please.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
Very much appreciate Commissioner Fish and Jim Blackwood on his staff working with my team, also BES staff Eli Callison and Lank Mann, and Portland Parks and Recreation, Elaine Nunn and Trang Lam. It's a very significant purchase to keep this boat ramping public ownership while at the same time providing necessary parks maintenance facilities. Aye.
Hales.
Very appreciative of this good move. Aye. Let's take
Mayor,
685.
it is now 9:45.
It is, all right, I was going to get rid of the second readings, so let's go ahead and do the 685 and then we'll switch.
665.
685, sorry. That was the next second reading, I believe. Right.
685,
Yeah.
amend intergovernmental agreement with the Multnomah County District Attorney to reimburse the Police Bureau for overtime cost of officers assigned to the District Attorney's Office as investigators.
Okay, second reading, roll call vote.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay, now we'll return to our 945 times certain. Would you read that item, please, 665?
Appeal of Keegan Flanderka Works Partnership Architecture against the Design Commission's interpretation and enforcement of Section C2, promote quality and permanence in development, specifically in regard to the proposed exterior cladding material for Jupiter Hotel expansion located at 910 East Burnside.
Okay, first, I believe it's the case that both Commissioner Saltzman and I have reviewed the record and intend to participate in the remainder of this hearing, if that's acceptable. Council? Okay? And then, does anyone of the five of us have any ex parte contacts or conflicts to declare? Hearing none, we're going to move back into the proceeding and allow the applicant to present rebuttal. Then have council deliberation and make a tentative decision. So the one remaining item from the previous hearing was rebuttal, and now's your chance for that. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm actually Carrie Strickland at Works Partnership Architecture. Very brief statement. Last week, we presented an appeal to you regarding one of the conditions of approval on our proposed Jupiter Hotel project. That condition required that we use a siding material that we feel like is not the best material for this project. As the hotel owner, Kelsey Bunker, stated in her testimony that though the type of shingle may seem like a small issue, it is in fact a primary detail that will make the difference between a mediocre building and an iconic building. We feel very strongly that the asphalt shingle is this detail. We are asking for your approval to use this material to create a beautiful, unique building that we can be proud of and will help further their business. The Design Commission had 3 concerns when they considered this material. They were concerned with permanence, quality, and setting a precedent. We've proven that this is a long-term solution. It's a very high quality. Representatives from Malarkey were here last week and testified on behalf of the quality of their material and spoke in support of using it on this project. Even the majority of the design commissioners believed that the asphalt shingle was the better solution and more in support of the design statement, but they feared setting a precedent and therefore choose to require an inferior product for the project. For the reasons that commissioners stated, they didn't feel like they could make a decision or a statement in support of the preferred material for the fear of setting a precedent. As City Council, you have the ability and the opportunity to make a more decisive statement. We are asking that you help us pull off the best version of this project. We do need your help to push the envelope, do something a little unorthodox, innovative, and daring, but again, something that is rooted in careful thought and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you very much. All right, so now we've reached the point in the process where the hearing has been completed, including rebuttal, and it's time for a motion for a tentative decision if someone has one.
So I have a suggestion, and that is, in looking at the approval criteria for the design review, there is the one that was called out, C31, looked through buildings throughout the district for contextual precedent, and innovation and creativity are encouraged in design proposals, which enhance overall district character. We did hear testimony that there are roofs that are currently clad in a similar asphalt shingle, and promoting C2 is promoting quality and permanence in development, and we heard that the Malarkey legacy shingles are much more permanent than some of the cheaper versions, plus they're a local firm, so I think, and as I mentioned last week, I had a lot of investigation into roofing materials because I'm planning to re-roof my house. And independently, somebody who's not connected with either of the projects had told me about the Malarkey siding, which is much more permanent and good quality. So my suggestion is to honor the design reviews. The Design Commission did have a preference for the asphalt as far as I can gather, but we're concerned about setting a precedent and also concerned about the quality. If we were to change the condition of approval to specifically allow Malarkey legacy shingles, and I would suggest that we keep the metal, because as the hotel owner said, if it turns out that it doesn't work, she's going to be the first to want to change it, because if you have an unattractive hotel facade, that people are not going to like it. So I would suggest that we leave in that they can change to metal as specified by the Design Commission, but allow them to have a try of the Malarkey legacy.
So it would be their, under this change, it would be their option ultimately in the construction of the project as to which material to use, but they are authorized to proceed with the shingles if they want to.
These particular kinds of shingles,
Yeah,
yes.
asphalt shingles, yeah.
Mayor,
Okay.
my preference is just to uphold the appeal. I thought the hearing last week was extremely helpful in framing the issues before us. And I appreciate that Ms. Strickland in her closing statement mentioned the concerns for permanence, quality, and precedent. I think sometimes we get hung up on this notion of precedent. And I think, rightly so, we're worried that in saying yes here, we've opened a Pandora's box. My understanding is that in every case like this, there is always the consideration of context and geography and history and all the factors that the Design Commission reviews. So I'm not so concerned about precedent. I'm actually concerned about the reverse precedent, which is where a city that is affirmatively committed to promoting innovation, we have a successful business owner that's willing to spend a lot of money expanding their site and wants to invest in an innovative technology for siding. We have an owner that has a huge amount of self-interest to maintain the building in a very high-quality condition since it's an ongoing business. And the best way to test whether this particular material works for the long term is to allow this particular applicant to partner with Malarkey and to put the siding on the building. And I fear that in some of these cases, we're getting too prescriptive at the administrative level. And in some instances, it feels to me like we're just substituting personal preference. In a case like this, where you have an architecture firm is doing first-rate work in the area, an owner-developer that's willing to stake a lot of their private money on this building, a building that, by the way, is probably about 60 to 65% glass. So it's mainly a transparent glass building. What we're talking about is a minority portion of the face and using a surface that has been used in other buildings, as has been cited in the record, although in most of the other examples, the entire building has been clad in this material. I think this is an example where we should reward innovation and creativity and give them the flexibility to do it. If it turns out over time that it doesn't work out as planned, then we can address the consequences of that. And I'm not worried about setting a precedent because in fact, a one building case study like this is inherently bound to the record, the location, the specific facts of this case. I'm worried about a different kind of precedent, which is we're telling our design community that we're not open to innovation. And I want Portland to be known as a place of innovation across the board, including in architecture.
So with that agreement, I would propose that we amend Condition B to say the alternate exterior cladding option of metal shingle in a dark gray or 26 gauge is allowed, or Malarkey Legacy asphalt siding in a dark gray or black.
So is that, are we at odds here, or do you two agree that the change that Commissioner Fritz has just suggested is permissive, and therefore giving the applicant that?
Could you read that again?
The alternate exterior cladding option of black metal shingle in a dark gray or 26 gauge is, and then strike required and strike asphalt composition signals not approved, say, is allowed, or Malarkey Legacy asphalt siding in a dark gray or black. The design, could I have a second so we can?
I'll second that.
Thank you. So the Design Commission, it is important to have the colors and the texture. That's a lot of what the Design Commission does. With you, Commissioner Fish, I think we should allow the innovation, but I don't think we should have them come back if it turns out it doesn't work. I think we should give them the other option that they can go back. It's what the Design Commission suggested, which was the metal shingles.
So because I'm operating today, Mayor, in a fog bank, and a lot of medication, I would want to know from the applicant whether that change satisfies the issue that they've asked for us to address.
All right with you? Yes. Okay. All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on, so we're going to, this would grant the appeal and change the condition of approval as has been iterated by Commissioner Fritz. Okay? Roll call on that tentative decision with findings to follow.
Fish?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you, Commissioner Fritz. That seems like the right approach here. And I found the hearing last week fascinating. And I'm glad that we have the chance to be the backstop occasionally on these design commission processes, because I think ultimately that's the right outcome as well. And the concerns that the design commission raised are valid, and I appreciate within their discretion the way they focused on the three issues of permanence, quality, and precedent. But I also appreciated the applicant's testimony and passionate belief that this actually, using this surface, can make this a distinctive building that is an addition to the East Burnside district in which it falls. And I also appreciate that in taking the action that we are today, we're signaling that we want to see innovation. We want to allow things to happen that are outside the box, and that we should not be constrained in every instance with the concern that that sets a precedent, because while everything is essentially precedent, it doesn't set the mark for every other project which follows. And I think the best way to test drive this is to let this developer use the material. And there was a concern raised about quality, and I was persuaded when the hotel operator testified that she had probably a greater commitment to quality than anyone in the room, since her business depended on people wanting to pay a lot of money to stay in a building, and presumably that building needed to be in a first-class condition if people were to continue to come. So I found that compelling. Good discussion. I think it's the right outcome, and I'm pleased to support this approach. Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to thank the Design Commission and our staff who staff the Design Commission for the hard work they do and the long hours they put into that job. But I do think in this case that the fear of a precedent shouldn't stifle our ability to be innovative and to try a new building material, especially given the testimony last week about its durability and permanence. I do believe, I know Commissioner Hales and I met with design commissioners some time ago to talk about some of our concerns about the issues they struggle with. And we were talking about the new affordable apartments being constructed at the former site of the St. Francis Park. And I remember, I think it was the chair of the Design Commission saying how they had to struggle on that project which is 12 blocks from the Willamette River, with the goal or the standard that they consider proximity to the river in approving a design. So they're often given design criteria that are, that really require some head scratching to figure out how that applies to a particular project. And I think this one's much closer to home. Permanence of materials and durability is something they wrestle with every day. And it's not as abstract as proximity to the river for affordable apartments that are 12 blocks east of the river. So, as I said, I think it's not establishing a precedent. It really is allowing for subjective determinations by the council. And I think this is an appropriate decision to make. I think it is within our ability to be subjective and to be, to heed the design standards, but to recognize that the design standards don't always answer the question. And that's why the Design Commission is there, and that's why we're here when somebody makes an appeal of a Design Commission decision. So I'm pleased to support this appeal. Aye.
Novick?
I really appreciate the discussion, and I really look forward to seeing what the building looks like with this material. Aye.
Thanks very much to staff and to the Design Commission for all of your good work, and to the applicant for pushing the limits a little bit and to see what we could do that would be a little different, but still the high quality. And I do want to emphasize, I do believe it's within the Design Commission's purview, both to set standards for exterior materials and colors and siding and such, and also to be aware of when precedent is being set. But every design review is inherently setting some kind of a precedent because of the subjective nature of the approval criteria and the design guidelines. So thanks very much, and look forward to seeing the project. Aye.
Hales.
What an indication of health this is. That is that we're having this discussion in this way. As it happens, I had an early morning conversation upstairs with a group of people here studying Portland from Itajaí in the state of Santa Catarina in Brazil. And I told them, I think part of Portland's success is that we sweat the big stuff and the small stuff, and mentioned that by happenstance we would have a design review case and our comprehensive plan on the council calendar today, the big picture for 20 years and a quarter block. So we're sweating the big stuff and the small stuff. and I think that's part of our success. This building is innovative, and that's good. Our criteria should allow the new, and as you said, so I support this appeal. The Design Commission does do a great job. They're heavily loaded right now, and so I appreciate their amazing volunteer service as well as our staff. And again, we also appreciate the quality of the design community that we have in Portland, producing great buildings, innovative buildings. And I think in each case, it isn't necessarily our personal preference about what materials are used, but whether they meet the criteria. I think these do. I also think the building does an especially good job of transparency at street level, which is always an important criterion for me, that the pedestrian needs to be the first-class passenger in our city, so every building needs to support and respect that. But I think this does. Finally, I want to say that each of us on the council has our strengths and weaknesses. Some of us are better at things than others, but Commissioner Fish, I have to say that even with a cold, that was the best and longest speech about architecture that I've heard you make, and I was really impressed. And I agree with you. Aye.
Mayor, I can refer you to the prescription drugs I'm taking.
Whatever it is, it's
That-
working, yes.
That would be helpful.
Thank you very much. So we'll have come back with findings.
So typically, we would like to come back with findings in about 3 weeks. This one's fairly minor in
Yeah.
terms of the changes. We also have a 120-day issue. It would be great for staff if they had 2 weeks. That would require the applicant to extend the 120 days by a week.
Okay.
And I'm not sure, I haven't talked to them to see if they'd be willing to allow us to come back on the 29th for final adoption of findings, as opposed to next week.
That still work?
This is usually the moment where being gracious gets you extra points.
Okay. Have we got a solution?
So on the record, the applicant has agreed to allow us to extend the 120-day clock until adoption of findings on the 29th, and then the final order, maybe we can arrange to have that go out very quickly thereafter, so.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think
That
it's
will-
10.
sorry.
I'm sorry.
Is it the council clerk or the city attorney who wants my language written out? Got it.
Thanks, staff.
The
Okay.
time will be, 10:35 on June 29th, time certain.
That's obviously going to be fairly simple proceeding on our part, so thank you very much. Okay, let's move on, please, to the next item on our regular agenda, which is 680.
Proclaim results of the municipal nonpartisan primary election on Measure 26-173, temporary motor vehicle fuel tax for street repair, traffic safety.
Well, this is a very happy occasion, and I have the official document here from the results of the election. It says, whereas the council of the city of Portland referred to the voters of the city at the municipal nonpartisan primary election held on May 17th, 2016, a measure with ballot title caption, quote, temporary motor vehicle fuel tax for street repair, traffic safety, and such measure was designated on the ballot as Measure 26-173, and according to the official canvass, 108,191 votes were cast in favor of said measure, and 99,294 were cast against said measure. Now, therefore, it is hereby proclaimed by the mayor of the city of Portland that the measure with the ballot title captioned temporary motor vehicle fuel tax for street repair, traffic safety has been enacted and in effect. So I think we should suspend the rules, celebrate, and thank Commissioner Novick. You are, sir.
Thank you, Mayor, and I want to thank the voters for approving this measure, which will enable us to repair streets and to fill in gaps in the sidewalk and address dangerous intersections, especially in areas around schools, so that kids can safely walk and bike to school. It will make it safe for seniors to walk to bus stops in areas where now, again, we have gaps in the sidewalk along busy streets and dangerous intersections. And I trust that as the people of Portland see what we're able to do with the funds from this fuels tax, a lot of the people who voted against it will come to think that it was a good thing. And I also really want to thank the coalition of folks who supported the campaign. The Portland Business Alliance, advocates from East Portland, advocates for bicycle and pedestrian safety, the city's own unions. There's a broad coalition that supported this effort, and I'm particularly pleased because a couple of years ago, or a year and a half ago, we had kind of two camps among people that agreed we needed to do something about street repair and traffic safety. There were a bunch of folks who thought that we should spend the overwhelming majority of the money on street repair, and there was another bunch of folks that said, well, we need to spend at least half of it on traffic safety measures. And there was also disagreement about what the particular revenue collection measure should be. And we had a lot of discussions among everybody who agreed that we did need more revenue for street repair and traffic safety. And we had a meeting of the minds and a coming together among those different groups, and they were able to see each other's perspectives and band together behind this measure. So it's been a long process, but a very Portland process and a very successful process, and I am just pleased as all get out.
Mayor, can I just
Yes,
make
please.
two comments? First, Steve, we have a double debt to you because you took on this challenge while you were also on the ballot. And this required you to spend a lot of time you would otherwise be spending on another election on this particular issue. And we owe you a great debt for that and for the sacrifice you made. And second, I'm not saying that my family swung the vote for you, but I will point out that the two other voters in my household who were living in Europe did get their ballots back in time to be counted. We were happy to contribute 3 votes from my household.
That's great.
Thank you, and thank them.
That's great. Good work. Good work. Thank you very much. Okay, 681, please.
You want to read 682 also, or?
Yes, please, those two together.
681, authorize a grant agreement with LifeWorks Northwest for the use of U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance Grant Programs, funds in an amount not to exceed $220,000 for agency personnel expenses for the New Options for Women program. And 682, authorize a grant agreement with LifeWorks Northwest in an amount not to exceed $100,000 for fiscal year 2016 agency expenses for the New Options for Women program.
Great. I understand Sergeant Staples is here. There he is. Come on up, please. Good morning.
I'm Sergeant Norman Staples with the Portland Police Bureau Sex Trafficking Unit. And for the past few years, we have partnered with LifeWorks Northwest in helping rescued women and women of victims of sex trafficking to LifeWorks Northwest for helping them get out of the life of sex trafficking, for chemical dependency and mental health treatment. Kendra Harding is here to talk about LifeWorks Northwest.
I'm the program coordinator for the New Options for Women program with LifeWorks Northwest. And for those of you who may not know the details about the program, we've been partnering with the Portland Police for many years to provide services for case management, mental health services, and chemical dependency for women who have been affected by the sex industry and experience sexual exploitation. So our program, we're really proud to say that we have a survivor on staff who can connect with them on a peer level and take them to a lot of different community events and meetings and things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do if they didn't have that support from a mentor. We also have a variety of group therapy that can provide them support and services when exiting the life of prostitution through mental health and chemical dependency needs as well. So they're with us approximately 5 days per week, so we have a lot of engagement with the women that we serve, and we have a variety of court-mandated women who come to our program, as well as a variety of self-referral women as well. So even without that court mandate, a lot of women are seeking our services and really getting what they need. We have women who graduate who have had jobs that they've never been able to achieve before. They've gone back to school and they've completed their probation, which they've never done in the past, and getting off paper for the first time, which is a huge success.
Thank you. Questions? for either of
I'm
these
just-
two partners?
I'm just curious, we've funded this program, I think, what, 5, maybe 6 years?
Yes, sir.
So are we seeing more or less survivors in the last year or two coming through the program? And not a reflection of the program, just trying to get a picture of what's going on out there.
It's been about consistent, I would say, and that's through more women hearing about our program and coming to us through our self-referrals. So it's been, the numbers have been, I would say, consistent.
So steady over the 5 years or so? Okay.
I'm guessing that's because you're full all the time, right?
Full all the time?
Yeah, are all your beds occupied at,
Full
With it.
program, fully staffed up and.
is there a waiting list or?
No, there's no waiting list. We're an intensive outpatient program, so our women don't live on site with us, but we are able to respond and get them in for services within 48 hours.
That's good to know. So you're not turning anyone away? Okay. That's great.
And there is a residential component of it that we used to fund, right?
LifeWorks Northwest does have a residential program. It's called Project Network. So if we do have someone who may not benefit from an outpatient level of care, we do have the option to connect them to a residential program within LifeWorks. So yeah.
Other questions? Thank you both very much. Thanks for being here. Anyone else want to speak on these items?
I
There are
have
two.
3 people signed up.
Okay.
Please come on up. Mary Eng, Charles Johnson, and Laura Vanderklein.
Come on up.
Vanderlyn, thank you.
Good morning, City Council. My name is Mary Eng. Is the time rolling? I would love to meet with the lady who just spoke. I missed her name, and Sergeant Staples, and talk with them and get some cards so I could pass them out on a voluntary basis if I happen to find someone who might need those services. I really appreciate your interest in this, and I think what we have in the Pacific Northwest is an opportunity to move towards a full pattern of what is described in sex trafficking theory as the Nordic model. There's currently a very vibrant debate going on between people who want decriminalization of sex, such as the sort of German Walmart of brothels kind of approach, where sex trafficking is rampant at an all-time high. The Netherlands model did not work. Perhaps it was a noble experiment, but I tend to go towards the Swedish model, where a lot of incredible women who have exited sex trafficking have come forward and described the incredible amounts of violence they've suffered. And there's currently a controversy with Amnesty International, which the No Amnesty for Pimps campaign is working on the fact that amnesty has sort of been invaded by pimp agencies who want to promote the commodification of women's bodies. And from the Nordic model perspective, it's coming from an inherent gender equity basis, which has been more active in Norway and Sweden. And this Nordic model is moving to England in terms of discussion. Jeremy Corbyn, the leader of the Labour opposition, made some move to say decrim. Well, we all want decriminalization of sex trafficking. The real question is, what kind of attitude are we going to have to pimps, or as they say in England, punters or johns? And even within the government of England, we have a notorious cocaine addict running the Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, whose prostitute, or shall we say sex worker, I really don't care for that word, I apologize, has written an expose book about his drug addictions, his interest in sadomasochism. And we have such a kind of a lack of leadership, and I think the only way we're going to get through such difficult issues is for more heroic survivors to come forward, share their stories. I'm very, very excited about the fact that there's a survivor on staff, because I think people really feel alone when they're trafficked. Often there are issues with refugee status, with documentation status, with passports being held. I think I'm just going to let it go. And thank you very much. It's lovely to see all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
I'm at a loss of words.
Just give us your name first, sorry. Just put your name in the
I'm an
record.
artist.
Yes.
I'm at a loss of words. We're talking about people that are vulnerable, women that are vulnerable. You hired people that came into the city. You hired people that came into the city to reach out to the community. You hired those people, Rosenbaum and Watson, LLP, that are supposed to train our police officers to work in a crisis situation. You, sir, hired them. I know that you've been watching those meetings. Your commissioner was there. It is a zoo. A lot of those people that come there may be victims of sex trafficking. And they're being attacked. Rosenbaum and Watson are creating a mental health crisis, and you're doing nothing about it. Nothing. Nothing. You have security people walking around harassing people. What are you going to do about it, sir?
Thanks, but this is about.
What are you going to do about it?
We're going to talk about sex trafficking.
She has a
That's
minute
what
and
I
30
am
seconds. Don't
talking about.
interrupt
These
her.
are victims
Thank you very
of
much.
all sorts. I still have 1 minute. Don't interrupt me.
Go ahead.
You were there, Commissioner Fritz. Why are you smiling at me? I am not smiling. This is not funny. People are being arrested for using their First Amendment right to speak, for airing their grievances. You sat there, just sat there the entire time. That whole thing is supposed to be about community engagement. And you just sat there and thanked Watson and Rosenbaum and Kathleen Sadat. Thanked them for their work. It was a circus, a circus, a circus, a circus, a circus, and you sat there and thanked her. You, sir, brought them into the city from Chicago, from messy Chicago. You hired them. And you're still working with them. You're getting ready to hire another chair with them without the consult of the people. You better listen to the people.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Charles Johnson, and as Commissioner Fritz, I'm much more satisfied with your question and attentiveness, pointing out that LifeWorks Northwest apparently has a separate program offering inpatient services. But I think that confusion, the lack of specific numbers, makes it. We've had a nebulous discussion about there's a nonprofit running a program or two, and they're helping some of the women that are stuck in a horrible situation. No specific numbers other than the money. And you're all elected with a fiduciary duty to take care of money to provide maximum good to the maximum number of human beings. The human being number is the number that I wish had been more a part of this presentation. To know how many women have, recidivism is a crappy word for this situation, but it may be applicable. How many women have been successfully able to reboot their lives and work in a career that's the career of their choice without exploitation and oppression from men? That's what we want LifeWorks money to do. Certainly, I'm in favor of you voting for this program, but as the previous testimony indicated, we had a settlement hearing about a program that came out of the Department of Justice, the United States of America versus the City of Portland, for problems with police misconduct impacting mentally ill people and people appearing to have mental illness. 2 people were removed from that meeting in handcuffs, arrested, booked. Instead of just giving citations and walking away, they were run through the booking process in the county jail. 6 months ago, a person in crisis here, Mr. Barry Joe Stull, who's been on trial this week, had what was clearly a psychiatric-related mental health episode. There shouldn't be any doubts about it. But we as a city criminalized it, paid for a person who's got stabilizing housing, federally financed, to also sleep in the jail for 77 days and then get booted back out onto the street. Fortunately, his supportive housing was still there. So we still have hard work to do to make the rubber meet the road for best expenditures and best services to people who are in crisis. But please do vote for this so that all those women who are stuck in whatever situation, whether it's on 82nd, wherever the other hotspots are, or in brothels regarding human trafficking brought to this area. I came to Portland by choice. I'm thrilled to be here, but it's painful to know that there may be women essentially in slavery that need to get connected with this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Anyone else? Okay, these are emergency ordinances. Let's take a vote on the first one, please. 681.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
Well, I want to thank Sergeant Staples and the officers who work in the sex trafficking or human trafficking division of the Portland Police Bureau. Also want to thank LifeWorks Northwest for running a program. I've had a chance to visit this program early on in its inception, and I think it has a successful track record of helping women to find life off the streets. And we need to continue. It's a very tough challenge to get women into different, more productive lifestyles. There's a lot of issues around it, and it's tough work. So I think LifeWorks and Portland Police have the right approach here, which recognizes that these women are survivors and they need support to be successful. Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz.
Very much appreciate all of your work, and I appreciate the mayor as police commissioner that this wasn't even considered as a cut when the Police Bureau was looking at its budget this year, as it has in the past. It does help about 100 women and girls every year, and there need to be options for people to be able to escape the misery and abuse of sex trafficking. So thank you for providing this funding, and thank you for all of your work. Aye.
Hales,
Yeah, this approach that the Police Bureau is taking in this partnership with LifeWorks is, one of the better things I think that's going on in public safety in our city, just treating the victims of this traffic as victims and then focusing on the crime of purchasing sex rather than on the victim of trafficking who may be providing sexual services. So it's just an enlightened approach, and I appreciate it. And it's a couple of examples like this, the service coordination team being another, where we focus on getting somebody out of the life, out of addiction in those cases, out of a criminal record, a pattern of criminal records, and back into community. And it takes a lot of work. It's intensive, difficult work that the LifeWorks staff do. So we want to thank you and acknowledge you for doing that work. And again, I want to commend the Police Bureau for just the whole philosophy and consistent partnership that they've had with LifeWorks and other people in the community that want to do the right thing the right way. And that's exactly what this is. Thank you. Aye. Okay, and the second one, 682.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to 683.
Authorize an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Oregon for the use of U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance, Federal Fiscal Year 2015 National Sexual Assault Kit Initiative Grant Program funds of $125,657 for grant program expenses.
Okay, so there was a corrected amount there, right? It's now
Correct, I had it wrong on the agenda.
Yeah, okay. And let's see, George Burke was going to be here. Is there someone here from the Bureau on this item? Okay. Anyone want to speak on this item?
Yes.
683.
I didn't have a sign-up sheet. All right.
I want to, my name is Mary Eng, and I'd like to thank you, even you, Nick Fishby, for your participation in this. The National Sexual Assault Kit Initiative Grant Program is so long overdue. I remember the first time I was aware of the controversy in the law was when I found the Nick Kristof article in the New York Times sometime about 2009. And it was something like, "Is rape serious?" And from a personal perspective, I'd like to share something with you, which I think it's very graphic, very embarrassing, very sad. But when I was abducted in Nashville, Tennessee in 2002 in July, I was eventually taken into a medical treatment due to the fact that I was, I had aphasia. I was unable to speak. I was so traumatized I could hardly walk. I had endured a brutal sort of hostage-taking fight overnight. When I was put into a hospital bed, I was given a catheter to remove urine from my body, and I was under the unfortunate impression, oh, hey, somebody's doing my rape kit. And what actually happened is no, I did not get a rape kit in 2002 in Nashville. If I had, it probably would have sat on a shelf like all these other rape kits of these unfortunate victims of sexual assault. So I want to say from a personal standpoint, I felt extremely betrayed by the Nashville police. I reached out to them numerous times with witness, with information. We could have possibly gathered surveillance video. I wanted to investigate my crime, the crime that happened against me, and I was very willing to help. And what I found was that my rape was put on the back burner. I would wait for the police to show up at the crime scene where I had the witness ready to give testimony, and it was a non-event. It did not happen. I was not a human. My rights didn't matter. And it was very difficult to piece myself back. I had a very severe speech impediment. I had anorexia. I eventually just started eating ice cream. I was able to keep some weight on my body. But there is a lot of pain surrounding these issues, and I want to applaud every woman who's coming forward to explain the injustice she's experienced within the sexual assault system. And I think it's very, very difficult if we do not have women in policing. It is very difficult to report these kinds of crimes to men who are dismissive, if not victim blaming. So I just talked to some officer, Mike Effie and Gorgini or Gorgano, and then it was Sergeant Jensen about women in policing, and they gave me the number 16%. So that needs to change. We need 50-50. We need women options. We need trans. We need everything everyone needs, where anyone, including men who or trans people who are victims of a sexual crime, can feel that they can reach out and get justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Again, for the record, my name is Charles Johnson, and I do wish that this issue has been on the agenda here in different forms at different times, and it's been at the county. DA Underhill has a special staffed assistant district attorney to work on improvement of processing this type of work. But it's almost maybe a mistake that we don't have somebody from the city auditor's office and from the city attorney's office here, because what's going to happen is in a few years, y'all may have moved on to the next level of your careers, retirement, whatever, but the politicians who made the promises will have cycled through. We've had a lot of churn at the top of our police department. We have no idea who'll be in leadership at the police department. But the liability for the city for women who don't get treated properly during their sexual assault investigation is still there. Those are the issues that the city auditor's office looks at and the city attorney's office is concerned. We've stepped away from the headline that's followed this issue for the last couple of years, in that in Multnomah County, we didn't talk about how many rapes there were, but we know that over the last 10 years, 2,000 kits didn't get tested. Now, that doesn't mean every victim was neglected in that situation. Many of them, their defendants pled, and maybe they didn't pay for the kit or whatever. But, NGOs, nonprofits, and especially, as Ms. Ang and the people from LifeWorks have mentioned, survivors need to realize that they're the first line of defense and support in this situation. That these chairs that you all are seated in are only a 4-year term. Things, as you've learned during your experience, slip through the cracks. I'm sure the mayor was rather shocked and pleasantly surprised to discover he inherited the mayoral office of a city that had thousands of untested rape kits, and we had to wait for the federal government to find money to rescue us to process that backlog. But I want to commend you for your work and your statements to make sure that that doesn't happen again, and I hope we succeed in those regards. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Again, I am an artist, and I have a hard time even trusting this, that you could even make a decision for women that have been suffering from sex trafficking when you bring in people like Rosenbaum and Watson LLP into the city to deal with people with mental health crisis, going through sex trafficking, young women. I videotaped a bunch of women in Vancouver that had gone through sex trafficking, that had severe experiences. I have a hard time believing that you could make those kind of decisions when you bring somebody like Rosenbaum and Watson LLP into the city, who are creating health crisis to sell their little crisis intervention team training into the city and into internationally everywhere. They are creating a health crisis. A health crisis. Do something. You haven't showed up to any of those meetings. They're out of policy because they're supposed to have a meeting with you and the chief, and there is no chief now. Your chief is shooting somebody in the back, and you're keeping it a secret, and you're supposed to be making these kind of decisions. You, Mayor, brought Rosenbaum and Watson into the city. You hired them. You hired Rosenbaum and Watson, LLP. You hired them and brought them into the city. And they are creating a health crisis where Amanda Fritz is part of that. She sat there and she smiled at me. She sat there and thanked the chair for her abuse. You're abusing a huge group of people. You are responsible and you're not doing anything about it. What are you going to do about it, sir?
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, anyone else? All right, this is an emergency ordinance. Let's take a vote, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Hales.
Sexual assault is one of the most underreported crimes in the city. It's one of the few Part 1 crimes that has increased in the last few years. So this is important that we do a better job. Testing, I think, is going to motivate victims to make a report when they are victims, and it will help lead to the identification of serial sexual offenders, and will provide some justice and some closure for survivors. So I very much appreciate that we are doing this and doing it the right way. Aye. Okay, 684.
Amend a grant with Central City Concern to extend for 4 years at a not-to-exceed amount of $8,522,821 to provide services through the Cheers van and sobering station.
I think there were some questions on this last time. That's just why Commander Westbrook's here. Are there any remaining questions about this?
We also have
wanna
an emergency clause to add.
Yeah, I would move to add an emergency clause.
Second?
Okay, motion to add the emergency clause. Roll call, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Anything you need to enlighten us about before we take action?
Mayor.
Ready to go to work? All right,
Mayor,
let's take a vote.
just for practice in terms of an emergency, it's always a good idea to state the reason for the emergency, so that could be added to the ordinance. Is there a language
Yeah.
that's already been given to the council clerk?
I think
There is a section 2 that was provided. I can read it.
Okay.
It says,
Yeah.
the council declares that an emergency exists because the city needs to act promptly to ensure continuity of this program. Therefore, the ordinance shall be in full force and effect from and after its passage by the council.
Yes, thank you. And that's because it's June 15th and the fiscal year starts in 2 weeks. Okay, roll call, please, on the now emergency ordinance.
Oh, do we have to do testimony first?
I don't believe so. It's a previous agenda, right? We had a hearing, so we're ready to take action.
We did not call for testimony, we just immediately passed it on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the
Last week,
8th.
I wasn't here, so.
Right.
So there was not a hearing last week?
No, we just read the title, but we didn't
Oh,
take
okay,
testimony.
all right. Commander, anything you need to add before, we apparently do need to have a hearing, so anything you want to tell us about this program?
This is a continuation of the contract with Central City Concern for Cheers and the Sobering Grant, and that it extends the contract through 2020.
Yeah, the amount that's shown is 4 years' worth of services, right?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Great, thank you very much. We'll see if there are any questions at the end here.
I
Anyone?
just have a question about, does the contract allow for some variation should it be found that we'd like Cheers to do transportation for things other than taking people to the sobering station?
No, I think that would be a bigger question. It comes down to authority most of the time, so can't remember, there is an authority that they're given in order to take somebody on the civil hold of for sobering, but not for any other
But this
reason.
raises an important question, which I think we do need to discuss, which is once the Unity Center is open, and there's a need to transport people who are in a mental health crisis to the Unity Center.
It's my understanding that's all being, ambulances are going to be doing that.
Yeah, I'm wondering
Only-
if,
Only ambulances?
well, that's the current plan, which is obviously very, very expensive, and since we're already paying for the Cheers van, I would like to have some discussion of whether that could be used to help people get to the Unity Center.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. And an ambulance is both expensive and forbidding as an environment. So maybe we could do better than that.
All righty?
All right. So let's discuss that more with the council and also obviously with the county, since they are the keepers of the ambulance contract before that October opening.
Right.
Thank you, Commander.
But
Appreciate it.
it wouldn't inhibit, I think if you could, you can always make amendments, I'm told.
Right. Cheers will be operating as per this agreement unless we change it. Right. Okay. Thank you. Anyone want to speak on Cheers?
3 people signed up, Mary Eng, Charles Johnson, and Laura Vanderlyn.
Okay. Okay, folks, and you do need to focus on the subject of Cheers.
Absolutely. Hi, Council. It's nice to see you. My name is Mary Rose Lenore Eng. I want to talk to you about an experience that happened that would have been a place where I would have liked to been able to said, hey, Sarah Westerbrook, can you help me here? So imagine this. I'm standing outside a hotel on May 7th, 2015. I hear a loud clatter. A man is like squealing, like, ah, ah, like as loud as he can, and I start to hear crashing. So I run to the edge of where this crashing is. My goal is to run into the fire, not away from the fire. So I go and I'm thinking, oh no, what is it? It sounds like some kind of protester gone wild. So I get there and I see a very thin man starting to attack cars, and he's putting his whole hand and his whole face on the cars, going, ah! But then he basically takes a dive around towards that place by the library where there's that beautiful mural of children behind the library and Habibi restaurant. So he's going that way, and I basically take off running, and I just happen to have my camera rolling because, you know, I love thousands of YouTubes. So I've got my camera rolling. I recognize his face, and I say, I know him. I couldn't remember his name. His name is Mr. Patel. Patel is a vegan. He comes from a straight edge punk background, and a Hindu family. And their main gripe with him is he won't drink milk from the sacred cow. So I know this is a good person. So I start vouching for his integrity, saying, I know him. Come here. And I basically get in between what might have been a tasering, it could have been a potentially disruptive arrest, and I start hugging him. And he recognizes me from Food Not Bombs in 2005 in Colonel Sumner Park, because we had bonded many times, and he's a very lovely person. But it became apparent to me when I was close to him that he was intoxicated, and the officers on the scene basically gathered around me, watching like we were in the center of it. But the thing was, is I do have a previous friendship with Mr. Patel. I just couldn't remember his name because he had a unique nickname that he had selected for himself, like O something. I know it started with an O. So I was trying to get his name written down. And as the car came up to take him to Hooper, which is a similar kind of detox place, the driver or paramedic or whatever he was said, do you want to work my job? And I was able to talk to an lady officer named Shauna, who we communicated on the other crisis I was helping with at that time. So what it signified to me is that this was the day that our President of the United States of America, was in town at that hotel. And what I take it for was a one-man riot. Unfortunately, his riot didn't work out very well, and he was intoxicated when he started it, and he caused quite a big kerfluffle. I said, oh, well, you're a Sagittarius, and I'm a Leo, and we're compatible, and Obama's a Leo, and he's compatible, and I know Miss Fritz is an Aries, so we're also compatible in fire, and I want to be a police astrologer. This is the new emerging insanity from COAP.
Thank you. Welcome.
I want to know what you're going to do about the mental health crisis that is being created.
You need to be on
by
this. No,
Rosenbaum
ma'am,
and
ma'am.
Watson, the
Don't
people that
interrupt.
you hired them.
You're out of
You
order.
hired them.
I know I did. This is about Cheers. Do you
Thank
have anything
you.
to say
Thank
about
you
Cheers?
for admitting that you hired a mental health crisis.
Mr. Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't know how many people in this room or down at home are aware. Cheers operates at least one van, and I think that's something that's going to need to come up in the discussion. It's a $8 million contract, and of course, services. All I care about is the effectiveness of the services. I don't care if they have 20 parked vans or one parked van, but I would hope that as we work through the police union negotiation, I think we've had some progress there. There's also a review in this topsy-turvy world called Portland Police Bureau, where I was pleased to have Acting Chief Henderson come to the vigil and speak, I think, before or after you, and that she can, as she's done with the recent decision of the Citizens Review Committee, the Citizens Review Committee said, oh, cops screwed up. It's going to the city council. The very next day, wisely, even if it deprived us of some valuable public hearing, Acting Chief Henderson says, no, it's not going to city council because we're going to take appropriate disciplinary action within our department. So as we have this thing where we have people testifying about what's a zoo at the COAB.
Charles, I need you to focus on Cheers.
Cheers is going to be coming to the COAB because we're going to be having drunk,
COAB
distressed
drinking game.
people in the COAB if we can't get traction with Rosenbaum and Watson. So Cheers, and we've also, and you personally, before I came up here and before the artist began her testimony, the Unity Center and ambulances came up. So this $8 million for Cheers and the millions that's going through Rosenbaum and Watson because of the United States of America versus the city of Portland, there needs to be more public engagement about how Cheers is effectively going to make a safe, pleasant downtown where people don't get injured but get connected to services, and how the COAB is going to become an atmosphere where people aren't driven to distress or arrest, and there's progress on making sure that mentally ill people are not traumatized anywhere in the city, whether it's a police accountment.
You need to let other people speak. You need to let other people speak, please. Thank you, Charles.
I'm not distressed that she interrupted, but I am through with my testimony. And let's
thank you
get some
very
progress,
much.
please.
Thanks very much. Let's take a vote, please.
Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
Well, again, Mayor, I'm really pleased. I think it was the very first budget you did that you put Cheers into ongoing funding, and now that we can give them the 4-year contracts, which provides stability and allows us to have the further conversations about how we might be able to involve them even more. So thank you for that. Aye.
Hale.
Yeah, Cheers does good work. I encourage people to do a ride-along with them, just like with police occasionally, to see how thoughtfully and humanely they do this work. I appreciate it very much. Aye. Okay, let's see, we voted on 685, right? And I didn't check on my sheet, but I think I did.
Yep.
Yes, 686.
Amend Portland Tourism Improvement District Code to revise the periodic sunset review and administrative cost provisions, provide a new definition, and add appeal procedures and correct references.
Okay, it's a second reading. Let's take a vote, please.
Fish.
Aye.
Saltzman,
Well, I want to thank Susan Hartnett for her good work on this tourism improvement district. And most importantly, thank the hoteliers in this city that have agreed to tax themselves in order to provide more effective services to those who come to Portland for business or for pleasure. Aye.
Novick,
Thank you, Susan. Aye.
Fritz.
Yes, I also appreciate Susan Hartnett for all of her good work and for Travel Portland and their work with Travel Oregon and the hoteliers for providing this extra income. Aye.
Hale.
In the wonderful world of governmental acronyms, we have BIDS, LIDS, and TIDS. Aye. 687.
Accept 3 federal grants totaling $1,023,071 from the Department of Housing and Urban Development for Continuum of Care Planning, the administration of the Regional Homeless Management Information System, and Otis Supportive Housing Programs.
Thank you, Mayor. In November of 2015, the Portland Housing Bureau applied to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, for an annual renewal of 3 Continuum of Care grants in the total amount of $1,230,071. The funds will go towards planning administration of the Regional Homeless Management Information System and for support of housing programs that will be programmed through Cascadia Behavioral Health and Transition Projects. We have Ryan Dybert here. Ryan, if you want to add anything or answer questions.
Okay, questions for Ryan? That's a nice chunk of federal money.
Yes?
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone want to speak on this item? See if I can speak. So, yes? HUD? Okay, come on up.
All right, I have 3 people signed up, Mary Ing, Charles Johnson, and Laura Vanderlyn.
On this topic, please.
Absolutely. It's so lovely to see you, City Council. My name is Mary Rose Lenorang. Steve Novick, it's a pleasure to see you. Amanda Fritz, it's a pleasure to see you. Charlie Hales, I'm pleased with your interview with KGW on zombie houses. Dan Saltzman, I really want to commend you for your work on housing. Nick Fish, we get along. Maybe it's because I read your grandfolks' Wikipedia article. It was just so fascinating. Mr. Saltzman, I wanted to offer you the opportunity to really put on your superhero cape and move forward on a level of heroism that has been unseen heretofore. And we don't know where we're going with this housing catastrophe. We have the refugee crisis in Syria. I'm sometimes impressed that the refugees in Northern Europe are getting better treatment than our homeless here in the United States of America. So I want us to bring us up to an international humanitarian aid standard where we have, if people are forced to live in camps and tents, they are living in very high quality, heated, with sanitation services kinds of tents. What we've got, this little shamble Hooverville type stuff, is despicable. It afflicted my grandpa's generation. It's why he joined the Navy. So I want to thank you for this because I think housing and urban development needs to be expanded. We need forward thinkers like FDR, who transformed the blight and poverty into productivity. A particular hero that I have is Olof Palme, who for some reason gets blamed with the Million Program, which in Sweden Olof Palme went to Detroit, Michigan, and he saw the urban blight, he saw the destruction, the homelessness, the poverty, the rioting, the controversies, and he said, I'm going back to Sweden, and this is not going to happen to my country. I will build housing. And the Million Program, I've been there, what passes for standard impoverished housing, or just like a regular old blue-collar worker would have, excellent windows, double-paned windows, excellent insulation, excellent electricity, excellent water pressure, cleanliness, Scandinavian design, which focuses on simplicity, durability, and beauty, elegance. And when I was there, I felt the potential for the riots, which eventually broke out. So I was there in 2011 primarily, and when the riots broke out in 2013, I said, I can feel this. There has been an unanswered need. So once you meet the housing, you have to also meet the human needs. If there are afflicted populations who feel alienated, they need to be reached out to. So there may or may not be within this data management, systems management, a way of calculating what is the amount of social workers on staff for different kinds of crises, from alcoholism to domestic violence? What is the amount of cultural centers, libraries, computers, things that are cultural center related, which the Swedish term for that is kulturhuset. It's much more interesting than a library, and it's not a de facto homeless shelter like we have in our libraries, where women like me are afraid to enter libraries for fear I will be offered crystal meth or sex sales or any other kind of unfortunate situation. Our libraries should be sacrosanct because housing is a human right. We maybe need to form a constitution of Portland that solidifies that right, as the Swedish constitution solidifies the right to housing. But I thank you for your work and your work on women's issues as well. And I want to reach out to you specifically about the bullying on Facebook of David Keefe Davis as a skinhead when he's actually a Jewish man. And guess what? I just found out I have got a Jewish great-grandma, so it's hurting my heart.
Thanks, Mary. Yes. Okay, you need to say what you're going to
I'm
say.
exercising my First Amendment right.
You want to do that for 3 minutes? Go ahead.
You hired Rosenbaum and Watson, LLP. You brought them into the city to create a mental health crisis so they could sell their CIT, Crisis Intervention Team Training. So they could sell it all over the world, so they could franchise it. You brought them into the city. You sat there, Amanda Fritz, commissioner. Not one time did you stand up for the people. Not one time. You stood up for them. You stood up for them. Amanda Fritz, you stood up for them. You were at a meeting with me one time where you came and thanked me because I spoke up for the people. You thanked me. You shook my hand. And then you were someone else at that meeting the other night. You didn't stand up for the people, Amanda. You didn't. Commissioner Fritz, you didn't stand up for the people, Commissioner Fritz. Mayor Hales, you are not standing up for the people when you bring people like Rosenbaum and Watson, LLP, into the city to create a crisis, to sell their crisis intervention training. You didn't stand up for the people, Amanda. You didn't. You're a woman. You didn't stand up for the people, Amanda. Fritz, Commissioner. You did not stand up for the people. You just sat there and then you thanked them for the job that they're not doing. You haven't showed up, Mayor Hales, and listened to the people. You have not showed up at the Community Oversight Advisory Board meeting for the people. You did not stand up for the people. You did not speak up for the people. You are not speaking up for the people, Commissioner Fritz. You were there. You were there. There was bullying from the board. A board member offended somebody in public. The mayor, Rosenbaum, and Watson, and the chair are all refusing to apologize. Why is that? Why can't you own what you did? Why? Shame on you.
Thanks very much. Charles? Go ahead.
Good morning. Of all those concerns are very close to my heart, I'm also very much on this agenda item about HMIS. I don't know if you noticed, but recently there was some suggestion that Russian hackers had gotten into the Democratic database about Donald Trump. If anybody wants to hack it, the HMIS, the Homeless Management Information System, is a database. If you're homeless in the city of Portland, you'll be given a barcode that associates, we're not barcoding people, it's just a way to scan people and bring the records up faster. So 363-805, it doesn't mean a person's homeless, it just means they're in poverty and they're engaging with services at Join or at Transition Projects or maybe Central City Concern. I'm probably not competent to speak on the broad scope of whether HMIS is working and whether it deserves another $1 million. Unfortunately, nobody's here with the experience to speak on a broad scope of how HMIS is and isn't working. We're paying somebody $100,000 to run transition projects, and that's okay. They're working harder than they were a year ago because we've added shelters under the TPI contract. So the guy who oversees most of the HMIS stuff, services related George, his name is at Transition Projects, he also has to now deal with the Peace Shelter and the fact that our wonderful, loving city shut down the shelter in Multnomah Village. Multnomah Village, they won't have to worry about HMIS. They chased the homeless out. When you look at this item on the agenda link, a very, at least on my phone, I may be having technical difficulties, a very brief PDF comes up. I'm sure Mr. Saltzman could tell us what OTIS is. I didn't see OTIS, the acronym, decoded in there. It's a complex situation. As we've said in the past, we have anywhere from 25,000 to 60,000 people, 10% of the city, living in financial distress because housing costs are disproportionately high. Some of those people will be going to eviction court today, and then they'll wander around after their eviction happens, and they'll be entered into HMIS. So we need to make sure there's resource systems that are there to support the work that needs to be done by Transition Projects, by Join. But when we see, every time you see somebody under a tarp on Fifth Avenue and Sixth Avenue, that's a sign that we're not leveraging HMIS, these federal dollars, to get to where we would like to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone else? Then let's take a vote, please. It's an emergency ordinance.
Aye.
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 Well, $1 million is a lot of money, but it's not nearly as much as we used to get before the Reagan defunding of housing, and I hope that the federal government in the next administration starts stepping up for funding housing appropriately. Aye. All the same, thank you for getting it. Aye.
Fails.
Thank you, Commissioner. Aye. Okay, 688.
Appoint Kyle Collins, Jonathan Bolden, Idris Koshnow, and Mark Lutweiler to the Private for Hire Transportation Advisory Committee for terms to expire March 31, 2019.
Commissioner Novick.
Colleagues, these appointments complete the Private for Hire Transportation Advisory Committee. In January, the council approved 17 of the 19 members of the committee, and we plan to come back to council later after recruiting executive, town car, and shuttle drivers for those committee appointments. Since then, the appointed taxi driver vacated his seat on the committee. PBOT conducted targeted outreach to taxi drivers as well as town car and shuttle drivers for these appointments. I'd like to tell you a little bit about these appointees today. Jonathan Bolden will serve as the committee's town car driver representative. Jonathan has worked in the limo and executive sedan industry for more than 7 years in Portland and Seattle. He works as a driver for limo and sedan companies here in the Portland area. Before working in the for-hire industry, he owned a moving company covering Washington, Oregon, California, and Idaho. Idris Wall Kroshnaw will serve as the committee's shuttle driver representative. Idris was born in the small town of Kora in Kurdistan in northern Iraq. He finished a 4-year college degree in the College of Agriculture and Forestry at the University of Mosul in 1990. In 1996, he was evacuated by the U.S. government to Guam and granted political asylum. Settled in Portland in February 1997, sponsored by SOAR and ERCO. Began working as a welder and later a supervisor at a manufacturing company. He started working as a part-time shuttle driver at night in 1998, started full-time in 2000. In 2000, he purchased Eagle Shuttle LLC with a partner. 5 years later, opened Hillsborough Airport and Car Service LLC. Kyle Collins will serve as the taxi driver representative of the committee. Kyle is a driver for EcoCab, working for them since they launched operations in July 2015. Before working for EcoCab, he worked in the food and beverage industry. He's been a volunteer in his community since 2008. Also has experience as a town car and limo driver. This action today also replaces Michael Huggins with Mark Lutweiler as the Port of Portland representative of the committee. Mark currently works for the Port as the Commercial Roadway Systems Manager and oversees the daily operations of taxis, TNCs, and shuttles, including ground transportation, permitting, and ordinance enforcement at the Port. Prior to joining the Port earlier this year, Mark was airport manager at Bellingham International Airport, where he was instrumental in developing and rolling out a formal ground transportation program for all commercial transportation providers. So those are our nominees today, and Mark Williams of PBOT is here to answer any questions.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. Question, if I could. My understanding is that a number of appointees from the taxi industry have backed out, and that's one of the reasons why we're appointing someone else today. And can you give us an update on the reasons that prior appointees have given for choosing not to continue their service?
Sure. My name is Mark Williams. I'm the Regulatory Division Manager. So the original appointee was a full-time college student. We didn't realize he was currently enrolled at the time he applied for the position. He has since then gone back to school in South Dakota. And then we outreach to some of the other taxi cab companies. We had another individual, I can't remember her last name, I believe her first name was Alice, and she, at the last minute, decided that she didn't want to make that kind of commitment with the time that she had and for other personal reasons. So we called a few of the companies and to see if they could maybe hand-pick an individual for us to appoint for the driver of the committee. Kyle Collins was one that had reached out to us earlier, expressing his interest to be a part of this process. So after all the other efforts failed, I reached out to EcoCab to see if Kyle was still interested.
So there's a total of 17 people on this committee?
19.
19, excuse me. And there's one designated taxi driver
Correct.
representative of the 19?
Correct.
So given the fact that a significant portion of the regulatory oversight of this body applies to the taxi industry, do we have an assurance from Kyle Collins that he will take this appointment and make the necessary commitment to this, i.e. attend the meetings and be fully engaged?
I'm completely confident that he will be able to, and he has expressed to me his interest, like I indicated several times, that he would love to be a part of this process. He is very excited to be there, and I should also mention that the other members that we are appointing today have also been a part of this process for the initial 3 meetings, so they're not walking in brand new. Kyle will be the only one that hasn't attended the meeting before. Along with Kyle representing the taxi industry, we also have the owner of Broadway Cab, who also represents taxi owners in the industry, but the industry as a whole.
I have no doubt that the owner of Broadway Cab will be faithfully attending these meetings. I just think as long as it's clear that we're looking for someone to make the full commitment, and I guess with the history of the prior history, it's important that this person fulfills a very important position on the committee. So if you're confident that Mr. Collins is ready to make the full commitment to this job, I'm prepared to support your recommendation.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions for Mr. Williams? Thank you very much. Thanks. Anyone want to speak on these nominees? Okay, come on up. Mary, you've spoken several times this morning. Mary? You've
Yes.
spoken several times this morning. It has to be on the subject of these nominees, but
Absolutely.
I'm going to let Lightning go first because he came up first, but then I'll make sure you get a chance.
I don't
to
need
speak.
any special treatment. You don't have to handle me.
Thank you. Good.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog PDX. I do agree with the appointments. Again, I think I also heard that the owner of Broadway Cab would be attending these meetings, which I think is very beneficial. One of the concerns I want to just stress to the whole committee is that, as you know, a lot of these companies at Broadway Radio have taken a serious loss in their valuations of their businesses. And I want it understood by the new committee members that we need to figure out a way we can help them recoup their losses by, to quote, the shared economy, by bringing in Uber and Lyft. One of the ways that I've been trying to figure that out is I think Uber just received another $3.5 billion from Saudi Arabia, my understanding, for their expansion. What I'd like to propose to the committee is that make a suggestion to Uber at this time before they decide to do their IPO and allow these companies to have their built-in losses rolled into their IPO of Uber, and see if Uber will look at it at this time to understand that make a first step forward on doing something great in the Portland, Oregon market by allowing some type of profit incentive that you have made a tremendous amount of money by coming into this city. When you do your IPO and you will become your supercorn unicorn status, which you're trying to do, Mr. Kalanick, you will achieve that, but also pick up some of the people in Portland, Oregon, which I've asked at the beginning of this, and work them into your IPO, either by funding them back, low-interest loans, long-term, to continue to operate and build their businesses, or offer them a buy-in before you do your final IPO to where these companies can also show a rapid increase in profits, as you have done in the Portland, Oregon market, by riding the backs of the traditional cab companies, taking their ideas, creating a simple app, putting it on your platform, which anyone could do. The Sanwar brothers are doing that all day long to you at Silicon Valley. So understand, imitation is simple, but step forward and show how you can recoup their profits. You can do it through your IPO. Do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary, I think you're next.
Hi, my name is Mary Rose Eng, and I'd like to say hello, Council, again, Steve Novick, Amanda Fritz, Charlie Hales, Dan Saltzman, and Nick Fish. It's a pleasure to see you all. I would like to speak on Measure 688, the measure under the Bureau of Transportation under Commissioner Steve Novick to appoint Kyle Collins, Jonathan Bolden, Idis Koshnall, and Mark Lautweiler to the Private for Hire Transportation Advisory Committee in terms to expire March 31st, 2019. What I understand is that Ms. Fritz was isolated in her testimony and standpoint about her skepticism, which I believe to be a healthy skepticism about the Uber monolith, which I had no idea had Saudi Arabian funding. I find that utterly fascinating. But the issues which coalesce are, we've got a very impoverished generation on the one hand that can't afford a taxi fare. So I get that. Every Gen Y and maybe borderline Gen Xer that needs a $7 ride and not a $50 ride needs an Uber. I get it. I absolutely get it. It's just like couch surfing, the Pirate Bay, any kind of democratization of a resource. I get that. What I don't get is why we are not committed to women's safety, children's safety, and the safety of vulnerable persons, disabled persons. I am also concerned from a labor angle when we have cabbies or Uber cabbies getting bashed on the head by even drunk pint-sized women. A woman can be quite furious at times if she's drunk. And did you see that Med do that on YouTube? It was wild. So when we have our Transportation Advisory Committee, I understand that the taxi cab industry is very alienated. And there are some people who really believe that they would never trust putting their daughter in an Uber on the way to the airport. So I hope that the Transportation Advisory Committee doesn't have any pre-existing affiliations or pre-existing lobby arrangements or secret packs and envelopes of cash linking back to Uber or the taxi cab industry. And I find it very difficult to believe that there isn't some kind of secret arrangement. So I unfortunately am unable to report to the public whether Kyle Collins, Jonathan Bolden, Idis Koshnall, that's Koshnaw, or Mark Lautweiler, which is Leutwiler, have any affiliation with the Uber company. I don't know if they're technologists or Silicon Forest people or if they're Dark Ages people or Stone Age people. I don't know what kind of people they are and whether or not we should trust them. But I do trust Zach Goldsmith, who said he trusts a black cab in London. But the man's a millionaire or billionaire or something, so I'm not.
Thank you. Charles?
I'm going to be the closing. The artist is going to speak.
I'm exercising my First Amendment right to speak.
On this subject.
I'm exercising my First Amendment right to speak.
You have to speak on
I'm
this subject.
exercising my First Amendment right to speak. I'm 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 exercising my First Amendment right to speak. I am airing my grievances in a public building, in a public meeting. I'm exercising my freedom of speech. I am exercising the Constitution of the United States. I am asserting my right to speak. You, Amanda Fritz, did not stand up for the people. Mayor Hales, you hired a company named Rosenbaum and Watson, LLP, rosenbaum@gmail.com. rosenbaum@watson@gmail.com. Rosenbaum and Watson LLP@gmail.com. Rosenbaum and Watson LLP. You hired them, and you're doing nothing about them. They're creating a crisis. They're hurting people. They are hurting people. Along with you, with your complicity, you sat there. Amanda Fritz, Commissioner, you sat there quiet, complicit, while people were being hurt. While people were being hurt. While people were being traumatized. A man is being traumatized. A man is being gaslighted by public officials. Y'all better pay attention to this. There are people that are being gaslighted. There are people that are being criminalized because they're speaking up, because they're using their First Amendment right, and they're bringing their grievances to the right place. And they're being arrested. They're being excluded. They're being dismissed. They're being ignored. They're being ignored. A man brought a grievance to the COAB, to the meeting. It was a real grievance. It was reasonable. They don't like his voice. They don't like how he speaks. They don't like that he looks scruffy. What are you going to do about it? Shame on you.
Charles?
For the record, my name's Charles Johnson, and I always listen for the little audio clue that the mic is live. You all are well aware of this, but there may be some confusion with the way things are going. So Mr. Collins was sort of put in the hot seat by Commissioner Fish, but I appreciate Mr. Fish bringing that up because what he's really doing is talking about frontline workers. Of all this massive 17 or 19 person commission, Mr. Fish was good enough to talk about the important work that Kyle Collins, as a frontline driver, a person who's dependent on feeding his family probably through this work, is going to be surrounded by people who are in a slightly different situation. Yes, Broadway Cab, the owner of Broadway Cab, also has a family to feed. His home may be paid for, he may have mortgages, but actually this commission, we should think about if it is properly structured in accordance with Portland values. We have some good signs in the market. We know that a group of primarily Somali immigrant drivers have banded together and formed their own taxi company. Not on the committee yet. I have, even though it's going to be a contentious election, Chloe Udaly versus Steve Novick, I have good confidence in Commissioner Novick's work to make sure that this for-hire committee is as robust and effective as can be. But all of us should really be caring about business as a way to have quality of life for families to have good lives. So perhaps this committee should even have better engagement with frontline drivers. I don't know, there's a seat for the people who are struggling to maybe have Uber and Lyft driving be their primary income? And we don't have, this 3-page PDF doesn't list all the positions. It only talks about the new people, somebody from the Port of Portland. No comment about that. Although I know they're the regulatory agency for the licensing. Shuttle driver, I want to thank Commissioner Novick for his attentiveness there. Idris Koshnow, a Kurdistani immigrant to the United States. Technically, Kurdistan, his part, is under the control of the state of Iran right now. Bad foreign policy by the United States. It should be a Kurdish state. That's a little bit far from the topic on the agenda, though. I want to get back to the issue of what we as a city, we as a people, you as a city council, and this committee do to make sure that there's a robust spectrum of service jobs and jobs where people can make living income and keep this a vibrant, world-class, world-leading city. Best of luck, especially to Mr. Collins as he's under the microscope. Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve, before we vote, can I ask you a couple questions? I have forgotten, and maybe I need to just follow up with Director Treat, but do you recall what the frequency is in terms of council updates on the TNCs generally and compliance with the agreement?
I think I know, but I might have it wrong, so let me ask Mark to answer that.
Well, when's the next time we get an update on all the conditions that we established and compliance and whatever?
We're looking at coming back to council in November with an update. Again, Mark Williams, Regulatory Division Manager. But anytime council needs any updated information, we'd be more than happy to gather those and provide that.
One of the issues that I recall us discussing, and I believe Commissioner Saltzman was the proponent, was the level of identification on any TNC. And I believe, Dan, it was your amendment, but I believe it required more than just the symbol of the company. It required
Business license.
a business license. I drive a little bit more now than usual because my daughter left me her car before she moved to Europe. And there's obviously pervasive distracted driving on the roads. I mean, equal opportunity. Everybody seems to be distracted. But I have noticed a significant amount of distracted driving by TNCs. And what I notice on the identifying on the vehicle is just either a lift sign or a U and nothing else. Is there currently a requirement that the business license be prominently displayed?
Correct. So what we do know is happening is that the Lyft and Uber management has required all their drivers to initially write that number on the back of their trade dress, and as they come in to renew, I believe they're getting a more formal trade dress. The lettering is kind of small and hard to see from a distance, but during our enforcement actions, we are seeing that a lot of the drivers do have it there.
So with the caveat that I may have the worst eyesight of any member of the council, to say that the lettering is small is an understatement, because it has escaped completely my ability to detect it. And my recollection is that the purpose of having that information was so that a passenger, a pedestrian, another driver could get that number and then take some follow-up action. Commissioner Saltzman?
I think it was that, and also just to ensure that people driving are current in their business license requirements. So it was both.
So it just...
And the lettering is small, I will be the first to admit, so maybe we can improve that.
So this is not directly germane to this matter, but if I have a number of concerns, including the distracted driving, which I think is a function of people driving with their iPhones on, and whether that's allowed or not, because it's not texting, but it may be Google Mapping or whatever, is a different matter, but it does promote more distracted driving. But I've not been able to detect any of the business license information. And so is that something that we can at least consider, whether it's prominent enough?
I think we can totally consider that. I think the size of the lettering right now is kind of being determined by the size of the trade dress that they initially mass produced. And so they're writing that numbering at the bottom, and it is the business license with the city of Portland. But we can certainly go back to them and explore options.
I'd certainly be open to looking at a font requirement and saying that everybody has to be in compliance with that.
And when you say trade dress, you're referring to the sticker that's about that size?
Yes.
Okay, so that, and I'm not going to speak for the proponent of that amendment, but I thought we were requiring something more substantial than just small print on the bottom of the trade dress, which frankly, looks to me more like one of those eye tests you take when you're in the eye doctor, and very rarely do people pick up that bottom line. I thought it was supposed to be something that was more easier to read for the general public and for someone,
If I could, I'm Dave Benson, Parking Services Group Manager. So when we get a compliment or a complaint about a private for hire, at least I'd expect most people will use a license plate number. With the license plate number, it's pretty easily readable, and if we get that information, we can go right to the driver of that vehicle. I don't think it was ever our intent to use the business license number as a way for a citizen to report. Certainly, they could do that, but the license plate number is a slightly more effective way to do that.
Well, we can have this discussion. I just think it should be at least as visible as a license plate. And right now, you need binoculars to pick them up.
Yeah, it is very small. I've seen them on all the vehicles out there, and it's within the trade dress.
What's the current penalty for driving a vehicle with a trade dress that has a number on it, but it isn't actually the business license?
It would be $50, I believe, without having the penalty table in front of me. I believe it's the first offense is $50.
So if you put a sticker on your car with a phony business license, flagrantly not complying with this requirement, the fine you're facing is $50?
The initial fine is $50, yes.
I think we should.
Up after that?
It goes up, I believe, to 100 and then 150.
Well, I think we need to revisit that as well, Commissioner Novak.
But that's for not displaying. I mean, what is the initial fine for simply driving without a license?
Without the trade dress?
Without any business license at all?
Oh, without the business license at all. It is the same. It's $50. So without carrying your insurance, I recall, and without carrying your business license on you, you do have to have a paper copy on you in your vehicle. And without having the proper trade dress, I believe those three initial penalties do start at $50.
Does seem low.
It seems
I'm
like
certainly open to looking at increasing those.
Okay.
And that's if you don't carry them with you. What if it turns out you don't have a business license?
The only drivers that do not need a business license are those that actually are working as full-time employees. So currently that would be EcoCab and a few of the NEMTs out there that have full-time staff.
But what if you just don't have one?
You would be issued a sanction of $50.
So I think we're all in agreement that that's woefully inadequate.
Yeah, because in general, the penalty for not having a license ought to be more than the cost of the license, right? In other words, if it's cheaper to drive without one, someone might gamble until that they won't get caught, right? But if I'm going to get nailed for $300 for not having a $100 license, I'm probably going to be a better citizen.
But I do want to clarify that no driver is onboarded onto the platform for Uber or Lyft, nor will we certify any driver without first verifying their business license in our regulatory division. So they all have them. They don't often carry that copy with them, and that's what we're citing them for.
That's different.
Yeah.
So we're confident that every driver has a business license. This is about whether they adequately display it.
That's correct, yes.
Although I suppose it's theoretically possible for somebody to get hold of Uber or Lyft trade dress and put it on their car without being onboarded, so there should be meaningful sanctions for that.
Sure. So if you do go out there and let's say, I mean, you can buy these things, I understand, on the internet. You know, a driver could go out there and pose as a Lyft driver. But as you know, you do request those rides through the app. No person should get into a vehicle without requesting it through the app. Once you request that ride, or when we go out and we conduct an audit, the information that we have within our database for that day should reflect every active driver on the road that day. So we can confirm any driver on the road with an Uber or Lyft trade dress just by checking into our database.
But I thought we didn't have the entire database of who's driving for these companies, that we did it by audit.
In the new regulations, we made a requirement that every day they provide us a list of all of their active drivers on that particular day.
But we don't know whether that they have or not.
Yes, they do. We see it every day.
I know, you see a list, but you don't know whether that's the list, the whole list, and nothing but the list. Because you find that out by audit, right?
We do find that out by audit, but when we conduct our audits, again, we are going out there and we are calling an Uber or a Lyft driver using the app, and we are conducting that audit when they arrive. We also go out to the airport where they're waiting in the hold lot, and we can conduct audits on a number of vehicles all at once.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
It is helpful. Other questions?
I guess I would like an update. I think I've made this request known about the 50-cent per passenger surcharge that we put in place to fund enforcement efforts. If you could provide us, I'd like to know, you don't have to do it now, but maybe in writing, how much money has been generated to date?
Sure, we can do that for you.
What's the money going for?
Be happy to provide that, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both. Thanks very much. So is there a motion to adopt the report?
So moved.
Second. Roll call, please.
Thanks to all of the citizens who've agreed to serve in this important advisory role. And thank you, Commissioner Novick, for continuing to make progress on TNCs. Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Novick.
Thank you, Mark and Dave. And thanks, my colleagues, for their good questions. I did just want to explain what the rest of the membership of the committee consists of, because I think that would be helpful to people watching. We have a representative of the tourism industry, a representative of the Portland Commission on Disabilities. We have an at-large committee member with a disability, general member of the writing public, someone from the port, as we mentioned, someone from TriMet, a taxi company representative, a taxi driver representative, a TNC company representative, a TNC driver representative, an executive town car company representative, an executive town car driver representative, shuttle company representative, shuttle driver representative, a representative of a tour bus company, and a representative of a non-emergency medical transportation company. So that's how we get up to 19 people. Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, one more case. I mean, we depend on volunteer citizens to figure out whether buildings meet our design review standards. What is a historic landmark? And in this case, how do we fit the new economy into an old cab system? So appreciate these folks being willing to put a lot of volunteer hours into making the city work. Aye. Okay, 689.
Okay, Northeast Alderwood Drive, north of Northeast Alderwood Road, subject to certain conditions and reservations.
Second reading, roll call, please.
Fish,
Aye.
Saltzman,
Aye.
Novick,
Aye.
Fritz,
Aye.
Hale.
Aye. And 690.
Accept the report and recommendation to extend and modify the early agenda pilot project through December 21, 2016.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. This has been a partnership between my office and the city auditor, Mary Hel Caballero, and Sarah Landis is here to present.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sarah Landis, City Auditor's Office. I have your clerk, Carla Moorlove, with me for any questions.
He's here to object to the new system.
So we began the pilot project for early filing and early agenda release in late October of last year. The purpose of the pilot was to determine if it was feasible to produce the council agenda one day earlier on Thursdays. And this meant pushing the filing deadline to Monday from where it had been on Thursday. The idea was to give commissioners and the public more time to review agenda items before council meetings on Wednesdays. Overall, the results of the pilot project were mixed, with some benefits for commissioners' offices and some drawbacks for them as well. The experiment was extremely difficult for the council clerks and created many workflow and workload issues that could not be resolved. Monday filing deadline was generally seen by commissioner offices and bureaus as a drawback. They reported difficulty meeting the deadline for a variety of reasons. And they also reported that they had to delay or require 4/5 approval for items that were time sensitive but were not ready for Monday filings. Thursday agenda release was seen as positive by pretty much everybody because it provided additional time for agenda review. The problems for the clerks in terms of workflow were many. It created disjointed work as they handled two agendas simultaneously, and this was especially difficult when one of the clerks was absent. It increased the number of agenda revisions, and especially 4/5 and time certain cancellations. We saw 9 4/5 items in the 7 months that we had the pilot project running at the time that we produced this report, whereas in the past there had been a high of 3 over the course of the entire year. There is a greater risk for error and omission. There was more work after hours. There was more duplication of work. We also had some transparency concerns. Revisions and 4/5 make it difficult for the public to track what's going on with the agenda. There is a risk for delay in completion of disposition documents, and there was a correlation between the very early holiday filings and increased agenda modifications and scheduling problems down the road. The clerks feel strongly that the early agenda approach as it is currently outlined is not sustainable for our office. However, we really appreciate the desire to have earlier access to the agenda so that more review and research can take place prior to council meetings. So what we are proposing is, in this report, is that council extend the pilot project for another 6 months through December with the following changes. The filing deadline would move from Monday at 5 to Tuesday at noon, allowing more time to submit documents. The agenda will be released as early as possible on Fridays, hopefully by noon or earlier. And our ability to do this depends largely on the length of Thursday meetings and on staff coverage. We track data to see how this process goes and discuss with council at the end of the pilot period. And then finally, a draft agenda could be produced and provided for the council chiefs of staff on Thursday evenings for additional review time. This would have to have limited circulation, would be subject to change, and would not have supporting documents attached. The benefit of this would be additional time for commissioner offices to ask questions of other offices, prepare for the Friday chiefs of staff meeting, and generally get ready for the next week's council meeting a little bit earlier. But we are concerned about having drafts of agendas out there and the confusion that might cause. So we'd have to think that through a little more, but we'd be willing to do that. So that is the report, and the option before you is to approve the report and accept the recommendation to extend the pilot project with the modifications, or I guess do nothing and we revert back to the original filing deadlines that are in code.
I just want to add that I greatly appreciate Sarah, Carla, Sue, the city auditor, your patience and willingness to try to make this work. And I strongly support the revised pilot to see if we can get that little bit more, even a few hours of time on a Friday afternoon is good for my staff and for the public to be able to review. And I appreciate your shared valuing of that principle.
Yeah, I think this might thread the needle pretty well. So the first two recommendations, the Tuesday by noon filing and the early Friday release of the agenda, those are firm, but the draft agenda to chiefs of staff on Thursday evenings is kind of a maybe.
I think we can go ahead and give it a try. If we run into some real problems, we can walk back on that. What I am concerned about is, like I said, multiple agendas being available and having misinformation for the public when they could wait six working hours and have a good, clean draft.
We're very good at balancing multiple agendas on the city council.
Well, and the other advantage is that if we have something on a Thursday afternoon council that needs to go over, it will now be able to go over to the following week instead of for 2 weeks.
That's right.
I have two questions. One is, with these proposed modifications, will we likely decrease the current usage of the 4/5 agenda items?
Carla, you have to turn your mic on.
Carla. Carla. Of all people.
Yeah.
Welcome our distinguished clerk.
Thank you. The 4/5 coming on, the leftovers from the Thursday were a real big concern for us, a real problem for us. So, and this will solve that because we're going to be able to put anything carried over from Thursday, as Commissioner said, onto the next week instead of that 2-week kick out.
And that's very important for a lot of reasons, including the fact that we've run into some problems with 4/5 where we haven't had a requisite quorum on the council.
Correct.
And that gets more complicated. Carla, I wanted to ask you one other question that's not off the report, which is, in addition to the proposed modifications which we're going to adopt today, are there any other things that you would like our offices to focus on that make your job easier?
Thank you, Commissioner. What really helps is that a lot of you, or most of you, when you have items for filing, you bring them in early. That really helps, and we really appreciate that. And checking the items for thoroughness, even that's just the backing sheet, making sure the dollar amount is there, that what agenda you want it on is correct. That's, a check of the backing sheet by your offices is appreciated.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sounds like a solution. Public will still get earlier notice than the old way of doing business, and I like that. That's obviously the heart of the matter. So, okay, anyone want to speak on this item? On this item?
Oh. Why don't you?
Go ahead.
I'm exercising my First Amendment right to speak. I'm exercising my First Amendment right to speak. I'm using my freedom of expression to speak. I do want to thank the clerks, the council clerks for their service. Thank you very much. Amanda Fritz, you were there at a Community Oversight Advisory Board meeting where you were complicit. You sat there silent. You thanked the board for their job, for the job that they were doing. You thanked, in particular, Kathleen Sadat, the chair. Well, you saw her using her power to bully people. You saw her. And I'm pretty sure that you were part of that group that decided to bring security, planned security to be there ahead of time in a public meeting. I'm pretty sure that you were part of that. Were you part of that? Don't answer. I don't even want to know. But I know, Mayor, that you were, the city was part of those. They planned on bringing police presence to a Community Oversight Advisory Board where they're supposed to be reaching out to a community that has been traumatized by police for using excessive force. You hired the people, Rosenbaum and Watson, LLP, from Chicago. You brought them here into the city to traumatize people that have been traumatized by police use of excessive force. James Chassie was murdered because of excessive force. The conversation in those meetings is about murder. And every time we want to talk about the reality of excessive force, we are shut down because they're trying to make the meeting nice and beautiful and pretty. We have officials that constantly show up and never engage with the public. And yet they say engagement is the most important thing. Engagement is the most important thing. It's the most critical thing. Captain Michael Marshman said that. Critical, while he sits there every month, and never engages with the public, and walks out to people and ensures that they get taken away in a car, in a police car, for exercising their First Amendment right to speak, for airing their grievances. You, Commissioner Fritz, watched that whole thing go down, and you thanked Kathleen Sadat, the chair, for that type of work. Shame on you.
Thank you very
and
much.
shame on you.
Okay. Anyone else want to
Mayor
speak?
Hales, shame on you.
Thank you very much.
Don't
Okay.
interrupt me. I still had 3 seconds. I want my 3 seconds back.
No, it was beeping.
I want my 3 seconds back.
It was counting down.
Oh, I'm sorry, it was beeping now. Go ahead, you have 3 seconds.
Shame on you, Mayor Hales.
Thank you very much. Okay, let's take a vote, please. on
No,
this.
I'm here to speak, sir.
Sorry, I thought you had, Mary. Go ahead.
Okay. I wasn't just here to film. Misunderstanding. Hi, my name is Mary Rose Lenore Eng, and I'm here to speak on the measure under Commissioner Amanda Fritz, Measure 690, to accept the report and recommendation to extend and modify the early agenda pilot project through December 21st, 2016 report. So here's just some friendly feedback from a consumer of the city governmental services, or a citizen, as they used to say in the French Revolution time, citoyen. One thing I've noticed about the meetings, more generally speaking, is sometimes the terms are not quite user-friendly. So I had my aha moment towards the end, and I was like, oh, I get what this measure is about. This is about the preparation of this Magna Carta of the meeting. So this comes out. It's also printed in our fabulous DJC Oregon. So any young emerging activists who need to get an agenda can pick one up at the door, or also pick these up in the city boxes and outside in the hall. So I just wanted to draw attention to Carla Moorlove for her incredible kindness and sensitivity to me through my years being an activist here in Portland, and applaud any measures which will help the citizens participate in governance in an expedient and friendly and harmonious way. And I'd also like to point out that my unruly schedule, where sometimes maybe I'll apply to speak and then I'm not in town, don't interrupt now, that she's very sensitive about that. And when I first wanted to speak about police brutality against a blind brain injured man who I was helping, she was very sensitive about emailing her a request to speak. So that's fabulous. But what I was under the understanding from a very noted activist, Lone Vet, also known as Joe Walsh, was that there was some kind of move where the concept of the open mic at the meeting was in your predecessor, Sam Adams, who the notorious pedophile who had abused that poor fellow who came out on his blog, Brad Breedlove, when he was underage. The underage sex pedophile, Sam Adams, had removed the possibility of citizens to just come in and speak. So down at county, they still have the open mic, which I much prefer. Less premeditation, less agenda making, less written in stone. So say the tragedy in Orlando happens, you can go in and talk about the tragedy in Orlando, sign up that day. And I would highly move that the council, in a move towards true democracy, move towards a less exclusive, aristocratic, reading-centric. Dyslexic people don't understand this, and make it more user-friendly for us and more disability-friendly so we can get more opinions up here, more ideas, more communication styles, verbal styles, linguistic styles, and get just more outreach to all kinds of communities, including across different age groups, so we can have more fun.
Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Watchdog PDX. Again, on this situation, I do like the pilot project being extended. Again, I want to commend the work and the efforts of Carla and the auditors, which I think do exceptional work. And why I say that is it's the way that they like and how they deal with the public. And when this speaker by the name of Artist is making statements to you, Mr. Rosenbaum and Ms. Watts do not know how to deal with the public. And the reality is when we're talking freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and trying to allow people from the public to speak, they get cut off every time they try to do that. They end up getting arrested. They end up getting intimidated. They end up receiving things over the internet of harassment, almost hate speech toward them. And the reality is, if you do not step in and change that immediately, in my opinion, the settlement agreement, and I'm hoping Federal Judge Michael Simon will step in and take that agreement and void it immediately, and understand that you're in a position right now that if the public is speaking out against these individuals, I would highly recommend you look at making changes immediately and understand that you are still bound by that settlement agreement on how you treat the public, how you treat people that are mentally ill, how you allow people to exercise their freedom of speech and to speak in front of you is part of the settlement agreement itself. And if you don't want to follow that, I think that settlement agreement is in jeopardy, and I think it will fall apart. And this will be a historic situation that takes place, and it's going in that direction right now. Thank you.
Good morning. Charles Johnson for the record. And on both sides of these tables, I'm sure we have abundant respect and love for everybody in the clerk's office, especially Ms. Carla Lovemore, so that the heads don't get too swollen in the awesome clerk's office. I will say it's tragic that there wasn't a sign-up sheet for this particular item. But, there's so much work being done there. It is unfortunate that as Commissioner Fritz brought this item forward, this city council has not had a public discussion about the effectiveness of the communications policy regarding democracy. It's great as a controlled forum for you. Today, we had 4 people sign up for 5 possible slots. 1 slot wasn't ever filled. Of the 4 people that signed up, 1 was absent. I try not to be any more dictatorial than the mayor or any of you, so I'm not telling people they have to come and use these slots. If they're not using them, the problem is not maybe as bad as I make it sound when we come up here. But I do think on the idea of timely engagement with the public, you should construct a working group and think about, Ms. Fritz has addressed this sometimes, the advantage of being able to be abreast of the issues that people raise in their communications. So I don't have a definitive opinion on that, but I do think that to an outside observer, if de Tocqueville comes and looks at Portland, he's going to say that the county has a better democratic communication process of engagement with their citizens than the way we handle the open communication. So I encourage you to, with all the other work you have ahead of you, as we adjust to this new 6-month trial program, to also possibly think about that. I do think that Mayor Sam Adams and his relationship with a person who wasn't 18 doesn't rise to the level of the way some people have described it. I think that was a bigger tragedy with prior Mayor Goldsmith. But we will appreciate your engagement with the public and doing better here. It's just you elected people and us, and we're having a saner, less police-influenced conversation than what Rosenbaum and Watson is able to manage with Kathleen Sadat present. I deeply respect her earlier work on marriage equality. This isn't about demonizing people. It's about getting process that works without inflicting trauma. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there a motion to accept the report?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Well, thank you for this thoughtful report and for the suggested modifications. And Carla et al., you don't hear enough from us how grateful we are for the professional way that you handle your day-to-day work. And you have one of the hardest jobs in City Hall. And you perform your job with grace and with high professionalism, and we're the beneficiaries, so thank you. And if these modifications work, then we should continue them. If in 6 months you believe we should do another course correction, I hope you don't hesitate to come forward with those suggestions because we want to get it right. Thank you. Aye.
Councilman?
Well, I also want to thank the clerk's office for the outstanding job they do in care and feeding of the city council and the public. So thank you so much. And I'm pleased to support this correction, and I hope it will improve the process. And I too will be looking with critical eye 5 or 6 months from now if these changes still are causing undue problems. Aye.
Novik?
I appreciate Commissioner Fritz's desire to make sure that the public has more notice of what we're doing. I actually appreciate myself and my staff having more notice of what we're doing, but it's also very important not to make life hell for the clerk's office. So I appreciate this modification and hope that it works. Aye.
Well, thank you very much to Sarah Landis, Carla Moore-Love, Sue Parsons, your whole team in the council clerk's office and indeed in the auditor's office. Thank you to the auditor for being willing to try this approach to get more time for both the public and council offices to see what's on the next week's agenda. I particularly thank Jasmine Wadsworth on my staff, who is now off doing great works with the presumptive Democratic nominee. And I very much appreciate her 3 years in my office being our constituent services specialist. So she knows better than anybody else in my office, I think, how important it is to have accurate information going out as quickly as possible. Thanks to everybody. Aye.
Else?
Good work. Aye. And we're recessed till 2 o'clock.